The topic of this video is first mortgage bonds that trade on the U.S. stock market and trade like stocks. Several operating subsidiaries of utility holding companies issue first mortgage lien debt that attaches to substantially all assets owned by the subsidiary. That debt will have a higher credit rating than the senior unsecured debt issued by the parent company. Starting in 2008, I have discussed in my blog buying first mortgage lien debt. My first purchases in 2008 were in what I call exchange traded bonds. The word exchange simply refers to the stock exchange where these kind of bonds trade just like a stock. Most of them have been called by the issuers. I currently own 3 first mortgage exchange traded bonds issued by operating subsidiaries of the utility holding company that is called Entergy, Entergy, that trades under the symbol ETR. This is a huge utility holding company. Those trade in the stock market under the symbols EAI, issued by Entergy Arkansas, ELC, issued by Entergy Louisiana, and EMP, issued by Entergy Mississippi. Each of those first mortgage bonds has a $25 par value and are currently trading at discounts to that par value because of the rise in interest rates over the past 2 years. Call protection for exchange traded bonds is generally 5 years after the IPO, and the issuer then has the option at its discretion to call at par value plus accrued and unpaid interest after that period expires. All of the aforementioned first mortgage bonds can be called now at par value. The call protection period has expired. The issuers will call when it is in their interest to do so. This creates what I call asymmetric interest rate risk in favor of the issuer. If interest rates move higher and the bond moves lower in price, which has occurred for those 3 over the past 2 years, the issuer will allow the owners to keep the bonds going down in value. However, when interest rates move down sufficiently that the issuer can now call the bond and refinance at significantly lower coupon rates, it will do so, leaving the owner with proceeds that cannot be reinvested in similar credit-rated bonds at the same current yield or yield to maturity. The FM bonds that trade in the bond market, which I will discuss in a later video, contain what's called make-whole provisions, which penalize an issuer's early optional call in the scenario where rates have declined and would require, in many cases, a premium payment to par value to exercise that call option right. This will frequently prevent an early call when interest rates have declined sufficiently because the issuer would not want to pay that penalty. Exchange-traded bonds do not have make-whole provisions. So when the issuer exercises its right to call, it only has to pay par value plus accrued and unpaid interest. One of the first exchange-traded first mortgage bonds that I bought was in December 2008, and the coupon was then 7.2%. It was issued by Entergy Mississippi. My purchase price was $22.56. Because of the decline in interest rates and that the call protection period had expired, the issuer soon called that first mortgage bond at par value and refinanced with one that had a 4.9% coupon, which still trades under the symbol EMP. In addition to the asymmetric interest rate risk created by the absence of a make-whole provision, the 3 FM exchange-traded bonds that I mentioned have potentially long maturities, extending to 2066 in all three of them, unless the issuer exercises its optional call right earlier. That will create considerable interest rate risk for the owner of the bond, which will result in a lower price for those bonds when interest rates are going up. That is why EAI, ELC, and EMP are now trading at discounts to par value. All of those mature, as I said, in 2066 unless called earlier. Now I'm going to use the closing prices for each one of these bonds as of January 19th, 2024, and those are used to calculate the current yield number. ELC has a 4.875% coupon paid on a $25 par value. It closed at $21.95. The current yield at that price is 5.55%. EAI from Energy Arkansas also has a 4.875% coupon, closed slightly higher at $21.99, and has a 5.54% yield at that price. EMP has a 4.9% coupon, closed at $22.66, which creates a current yield of 5.41%. All of these bonds make interest payments quarterly, and they trade flat in the stock market, which simply means that whoever owns the security on the ex-interest date receives the entire quarterly interest payment, just like an owner of a common stock. When trading bonds in the bond market, those are $1,000 par value bonds, accrued interest has to be paid to the seller, which is not the case for exchange-traded bonds. I currently have no credit risk concerns for these bonds. I would be comfortable with the credit risk even without the protection of the first mortgage lien on substantially all assets. There is, however, significant and obvious interest rate risk given the potentially long maturities. In my taxable accounts, I have a 300 share limit for each of those FM bonds because of the interest rate risk. I prefer buying 1,000 par value first mortgage bonds in the bond market where I can control the interest rate risk. What I own now in first mortgage bonds mature in 2024 to 2028 and have make-whole provisions. And those include $1,000 first mortgage bonds issued by Energy Mississippi, Energy Arkansas, and Energy Louisiana. I will discuss those kind of first mortgage bonds that trade in the bond market in a later video.